So far, we have examined our lives and our place in the world for a minute. In our discussions previously, we have pondered on life's intriguing and important questions. Why do we do the things the way we do? In this sea of potential, how come we keep creating the same realities? What happens if we altogether stop assuming and instead looking into what we may consider to be impossible, unlikely, unreachable? We have considered possible realities we may be a part of, knowing that the universe is a very large place. We have looked at the ideas which have truly changed the world into what it is today. We considered the power of thought and the known mechanics as well as belief systems of today, preventing people from knowing certain answers. Remember, some options and potentials do exist of which we are not even aware. We discovered that the observer cannot be ignored, although we cannot truly see where it is placed, yet we all experience it. Remember, the observer is part of the observed reality. We have looked into the even more controversial subject of consciousness and awareness. How can we know if our consciousness depends upon our brain? Was it the ghost in the machine we were pondering about? We looked at some possible and impossible scenarios and made comparisons with ancient and modern viewpoints. Someone else asked, does consciousness survive death? Can we learn anything through science when we discover what NDE, or near-death experience, is? Can we really explain how and why NDE can offer evidence of an afterlife, and possibly discredit the psychological and physiological explanations of them? In the past, NDEs could have been reported as visions, mystical, and even religious experiences. In his The Republic, Plato describes one such. However, today, undeniably it is understood as coming closer to physical death, or maybe the time spent before being declared physically dead, and having a conscious memory of the experience. Most of the experiences discovered appear to be pleasant ones, but this does not imply that they are all desirable when fear, isolation, or forms of torment are also included in the experience. What are we talking about when speaking of NDEs, really? According to what has been witnessed by a large number of people, we can consider it in various classes. Raymond Moody's view is that a number of elements are experienced out of a potential of about 14. They illustrate the intensity of an impact the NDE may create on one's thoughts. 1. Realization of being dead. You might hear one saying, if I am dead, who or what is having that awareness? What or who is dead or alive? 2. Accessing profound wisdom. We will come to that in a moment. 3. Experiencing total acceptance and universal love. 4. Meeting and communicating with deceased ones. And this is debatable. We will come to that too. 5. OBE, out-of-body experience. If one can see one's own body from any particular perspective, What makes it possible to see it while one is not using one's bodily or physical eyes? Kenneth Ring's analysis in following phases can provide further considerations. 1. Affective phase. Feelings of absolute peace, calm, surrender, and happiness. No pain or suffering is felt. 2. OBE phase. Some no longer experience a body. Others can look down on their body and observe their own moments, or in a hospital, certain operations done. 3. Third phase, which includes a very dark space. 4. Tunnel phase. A feeling of traversing through a tunnel to blinding clear light, at times encountering the deceased. And 5. Fifth phase. Entry into a non-worldly environment of undescribable beauty. Michael Sabom's study considers two kinds of experience, or a combination of the two. 1. Otoscopic. The body and mind are separated. NDEers observed their own body and mind being separated by looking down at their own physicality, a mental force helping them to relocate themselves without limitation of place and time. 2. Transcendent. Observing events which truly transcend the earthly dimensions. Bruce Grayson considers the experience in 4 classes. 1. Cognitive, during which time disappears, thoughts are fast, life reviewed, flash forward, and accessing universal wisdom. 2. Affective, feeling peace, joy, cosmic oneness, and the presence of clear light. 3. Paranormal, all phenomena which cannot be explained by the laws of physics. 4. Transcendent, entry into a non-worldly environment, encounter with a mystical being, or deceased people, or religious figures, and arriving at a point of no return. Whichever way we may classify NDE, the results to the NDE's vision of reality is obvious. However, is the experience true? Is the experience genuine, or a false perception due to some unexplainable mechanism? Many such explanations can be classified as causation, yet there seems to be not enough or substantial evidence, because such explanations do include hypoxia, hypercapnia, alterations in brain chemistry through ketamine, endorphins, DMT, LSD, psilocybin, and mescaline, epilepsy, fear of death, depersonalization, hallucinations, and even recall of the birth process. No significant association has so far been discovered between NDEers and the social classes: race, gender, education, profession, marital status, place of residence, pre-knowledge of NDEers, or religion. Conditions in which NDE can occur include pathology, where the brain function is severely impaired, such as cardiac arrest, comatose, hypovolemic shock, general anesthesia, electrocution. But situations where the brain function is intact also need to be included: high fever, extreme dehydration or hypothermia, major depressive crisis, meditation, impending unavoidable death, spontaneous onset. For over 20 years, cardiologist Pim van Lommel has studied NDEs in patients who survived a cardiac arrest. In 2001, he and his fellow researchers published a prospective study on NDEs in the medical journal, The Lancet. He has compared demographic, medical, pharmacological, and psychological data between patients who reported NDE and patients who did not after resuscitations. In the long-lasting study of life changes after NDE, he compared the groups 2 and 8 years later. He then wrote The Dutch Endless Consciousness in 2007. According to his opinions, the NDE is an authentic experience and cannot be attributed to imagination, psychosis, or oxygen deprivation. After such an experience, patients' personalities undergo a permanent change. Interestingly also, van Lommel provides examples and ways that human consciousness does not always coincide with the brain functions, that consciousness can even be experienced separate from the body. Penny Sartoni has also conducted a long-term prospective study of NDEs in a Welsh intensive therapy unit. She reported that having all aspects of NDE, the phenomena remained unexplained when considered from the current scientific perspective of consciousness being a byproduct of neurological processes. She concluded that current reductionist arguments were not supported when this phenomenon was examined in the clinical sense, and therefore further research needed to be conducted to establish a wider explanation of the NDE. Susan Blackmore has written a few articles on NDEs. She tells us that a number of skeptics attribute the experience either to wishful thinking or to taking drugs. She also says that this seems most unlikely given the cross-cultural findings and research showing that most drugs tend to reduce the clarity and complexity of NDE. And so some have the vision that the reality experienced during NDE and the reality experienced as subjective objectivity in space and time are not congruent, and never were congruent and never will be. However, we deal with an apparent separation of cause and effect in our planetary existence. In the other reality, we experience non-localized cause, relationships. The understanding and wisdom of the world therefore does not apply to the one of NDE. Now the question, is the NDE evidence of life after physical death? What I have discovered is that Alan Kelleher conducted an Australian study on community attitudes towards NDE and found that about 57% of the respondents believed NDE was evidence of life after death, and that less than 2% considered it as a mental disorder. However, since its inception, many results of quantum mechanics have provoked strong philosophical debates and many interpretations. The Copenhagen interpretation due to the Danish theoretical physicist Niels Bohr is the interpretation of quantum mechanics most widely accepted among physicists. According to it, quantum mechanics provides probabilistic results because the physical universe is in itself probabilistic rather than deterministic. In quantum theory, we can be dead and alive, not dead and not alive, but we cannot be dead or alive. How shall we interpret this? Well, certainly Albert Einstein does not like this loss of determination in measurement, and so he says, God does not play dice. However, removed from it all, there is an awareness of another reality which fundamentally is not of this world. It is a reality we apparently can become aware of once our consciousness is loosened from our deep-seated self-concept of being a body. This awareness may affect the loss of our fear of death to the extent that it is no longer a part of our mind. However, these studies do not provide the evidence that after our physical death, we continue on living with the personalities through which we know ourselves and each other during our lives on this planet Earth. There is no denial of the fact of the death of our bodies, but it is important to remember that some in a near-death situation report a conscious experience of the event.